Marvel World Unleashed, Villain Resurrects Ancient Gods from Myth. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 41. It had been nearly an hour since the three of Tony entered the ruins. In the infinite darkness, the trio constantly shuttled, sometimes lying on their stomachs through collapsed pillars, and sometimes jumping over some broken bridge deck. This road is not easy, but fortunately, the three of them are not ordinary. Finally, they came to a broken circular tower. The diameter of the tower is not to say tens of meters, although it is already a ruin, but even if it is a ruin, its height is tens of meters high, which is extremely mysterious and terrifying in this dark underground. Looking at the tower in front of you, it's hard to imagine how magnificent it will be when it is complete. Only a few of the windows on the walls of the tower are intact, and most of them are broken, and the traces of damage look like something was destroyed from inside the tower. Tony looked at the tower in front of him, and his eyes showed extremely deep heartache and helplessness. This made both Hawkeye and Natasha feel strange. "Tony, what's wrong with you?" Hawkeye asked. "You won't understand, this is a lament for what was once great but what it is now, and the only people who can understand me are those who have seen the glory of this tower as I do." Tony's tone was deep and mysterious, and Hawkeye and Natasha were silent for a while. They all felt that Tony was a little sick at this point. But this cannot be said. "Let's go inside, this is what I call the big library of all knowledge." Tony regained his composure after the remembrance. His words surprised Hawkeye and Natasha. The target they were searching for was finally found. The three entered the tower one by one. The traces inside the tower are even more poignant. The tall bookshelves that used to be in Tony's dream are now in ruins, the heavy books are completely gone, and the place is like a scene of ruins. After seeing this scene, Tony's heart couldn't help but sink. It looks like there's a fight going on here. Natasha stroked the fallen bookshelf and analyzed. And both sides of this battle are definitely very large. Hawkeye looked at a broken piece of wood with a rather serious expression. But Tony didn't pay attention to the two, and he went straight to the corner of the book collection he remembered. That corner is at the very bottom of a bookshelf inside the tower near the wall. Now the bookshelf has been destroyed by external forces, but its bottom is still relatively well preserved. It may be because it is too far down, so it is coincidentally not injured when there is turmoil. Tony pulled out a stone box from that corner. Then gently opened the lid of the box. When he saw the paper in the box, Tony's heart was slightly relieved. Hawkeye and Natasha came to his side, both curious about what it was. Tony said softly, "This is something I used to write about here." His words shocked Hawkeye and Natasha. Eagle's eyes sharpened, and he saw the words on the paper, which was written in neat English. "My name is Tony Stark, I come from the 21st century of the Earth, according to the age of the Earth, my era is 4.55 billion years after the birth of the Earth, and there is a time span of 400 million years." The words on the paper revealed a sense of antiquity and vicissitudes that Hawkeye and Natasha could not imagine. It was as if they had actually seen the scene 400 million years ago. At that time, Tony Stark was sitting calmly at his desk, constantly writing messages from his own time. Then the scene changes again. It's the scene in front of you. 400 million years later, Tony Stark once again came to the place where he once wrote and recycled the words he wrote. "Seriously, I believe what you said now." Hawkeye looked at the scene in front of him with a dry mouth. Even the most top-level agents will lose their mind when they realize the story in front of them that transcends time and space. "What did you ever write?" Natasha asked. Tony didn't answer immediately, first quietly covering the stone box, then wrapping it in liquid metal, and then fitting it to the waist of his steel suit. After doing this, he spoke. "Everything I know is recorded here, along with some backups of future knowledge." Tony's words made Hawkeye and Natasha's faces change. Future knowledge. It's all too easy to think. Do you mean future knowledge, including the future direction of history? Of course not, although the Islamic civilization did have books that recorded the history of the future world, I don't want to read those books because I don't like the future without mystery. Tony's words made Natasha feel an extremely strong indignation. Seriously, she really wanted to punch the arrogant man in front of her. It is clear that such a valuable future history book does not even go to read it. Damn it. Don't look at me like that, you can go around and maybe find some books that record future history, but don't expect too much, the ISIS seem to have taken all the books with them. Natasha and Hawkeye didn't care about Tony's words. They immediately went to the ruins in search of something that might contain information. Finally, Natasha found a small stone slab engraved with black writing, no more than half the size of a human palm, in a deliberate ruin. Although the words on it were not understandable to humans, a strange spiritual fluctuation quietly emanated from the stone slab. Then Natasha understood the meaning of the twisted text. "We will finally leave, danger is approaching us, and I am ordered by the chief to store those ancient and evil taboo knowledge in the basement of the library. It's a pity that they can't be destroyed, otherwise I really want to burn them down, and if intelligent creatures discover our ruins in the future, please heed my warnings. Don't go underground, and don't read forbidden evil knowledge out of curiosity, otherwise bad things will happen. I don't know why I left this note, maybe it's a sense of guilt in my heart about the future, or maybe it's because of the influence of one of my human friends on me. In any case, please be sure to keep the evil knowledge hidden under the library strictly. Also, if you really decide to go underground to seek the forbidden knowledge of evil, those underground floor secret doors must not be opened. It seals what brings destruction." The amount of information contained in such a small stone slab shocked Natasha's heart. But before she could say anything to Tony Hawkeye, a sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside the tower. Natasha immediately pulled out her pistol, but the next moment the burst from the flash bomb made her lose her sight, but at the same time she quickly hid the small stone slab on herself. Tony immediately wanted to fight back, but suddenly there was a sharp paralysis from his armor. At his feet, a specially made circular bomb was emitting a blue glow. At the same time, Rumlow's laughter sounded. "Everyone, you have worked hard to explore, now it is time for us to receive the results." Natasha, who had regained consciousness but had been tied up, looked at Rumlow angrily and asked. "Damn, Brock Rumlow, you betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D. Who are you?" "Huh, who am I? I am the Hydra you are looking for." Episode 42. New York, Brooklyn. Watching this scene in the ruins, the corners of Liang's mouth slightly hooked. He didn't expect that Hydra was also mixed in. It adds a little freshness to this drama. What happens next? Liang said he was looking forward to it. And on the other side, Nick Fury is trying to contact Coulson, but when he can't get in touch anyway, he realizes something is wrong at the ruins. He immediately called someone. It was an extremely capable woman. Her name is Maria Hill. "Agent Hill, Agent Coulson is missing. I hope you can lead the team to investigate." "Yes, Chief." When Nick Fury began to shake people, the Tony trio in the large underground library of the ruins was not comfortable. All of them were taken down by Rumlow's men at this time. Natasha and Hawkeye are bound by flowers, while Tony is pressed against the wall by two metal poles, and the ultra-high voltage shocks that constantly appear from the tip of the long pole prevent Tony from activating the corresponding function of the armor. "Aren't you going to reveal the secrets about this ruin?" Rumlow looked at the Tony three and asked rather sinisterly. "Bullock, you can't escape Fury's palm. Fury is estimated to have sent someone now. I advise you to run away as soon as possible." "Syllable." Rumlow slapped Natasha. He stroked his palm and said, "I really can't see the situation. Natasha, are you still so stubborn in this situation? Hey, you are a soft egg waste man. You can also rely on sneak attacks to deal with us, and if you have the ability, you will kill me." Natasha spat out a mouthful of blood and laughed. "Humph, trying to provoke me to kill you? Don't worry, Natasha, I won't. You're the best human test subject in our organization. Just imagine the scene when your memory is completely cleared and then help us do things. What do you think?" Rumlow's words made Natasha's eyes reveal killing intent. Then Rumlow looked at Tony and Hawkeye and said, "It seems that neither of you are going to reveal the secret of this ruin. It doesn't matter, someone will pry open your head later, and you can't hide it if you want to at that time." Rumlow said and looked back. Above the ruins, a dozen Hydra agents were searching for information. The light source they carry illuminates this supposedly pitch-black space extremely brightly, and in this endless dark underground, this place is particularly eye-catching. "Hurry up and find it, we don't have much time. You must evacuate before Nick Fury's people arrive." Rumlow snapped. The agents immediately sped up their movements. And a moment later, suddenly, news came from an agent. "Report, I found a wooden door leading to the ground here." After hearing this, Natasha's eyes changed slightly, and she quietly looked at Hawkeye, while using the common code between the two to deliver the message. Get ready. Although Hawkeye, who received Natasha's signal, was puzzled, he obediently obeyed the other party. As long as the time is ripe, he will use hidden props to cut the rope on his body. Tony is somewhat caught up in memories of the past. The basement of the library. He remembered hearing Doc mention it before. Doc acted with fear and resentment. There seems to be some kind of creature locked up there. But when Tony asked, Doc was silent. Now Tony watched the group of Hydra agents enter the basement of the library, and he couldn't help but look forward to it. Hopefully, all of them will die at the hands of that unknown creature. But after such a long time, will the unknown creature still be alive? The anticipation in Tony's heart dissipated a little again. At this time, Rumlow had already arrived at the wooden door that led to the ground. He simply pried open the door, and then walked down to the endless darkness in front of him. He was accompanied by several agents. When Rumlow came to the basement of the library, the first thing he saw was the illuminated mural in front of him. It was an image depicting the great race of Iz, but Rumlow did not know the existence of the great race of Iz, and he could only guess the meaning of the mural in front of him. The mural was painted around the dark underground space, and Rumlow took the team around. He seemed to understand. It seems to be a record of a war between two different races of creatures that once lived on Earth. And the final ending ends with the departure of a creature from Earth. Take pictures of all these murals and go back to the experts to study. Yes. One agent listened to Rumlow's words and began to take pictures, while the rest were looking for other anomalies in the underground space. It just so happened that one of the agents ran into nowhere. A stone door lurking in that wall slammed open. Then Rumlow saw something in the stone door. It was a huge black book floating in the air, about the size of an ordinary half a person. I don't know where the faint light source comes from illuminates it. The moment he saw the book, Rumlow's eyes seemed to see some kind of incredible scene, and then fell into an obvious obsession. Then a longing came from nowhere. This desire drove him forward. When he came to the paper, Rumlow's spirit and consciousness were on the verge of an unconscious madness. His expression became like a hunting dog seeing a piece of meat, and his eyes became extremely crazy, like a psychotic maniac. He gently stroked his hand over the book. The next moment, the book strangely became the size of human reading habits, and then a low moan came out of Rumlow's mouth. At this moment, Rumlow suddenly had the idea of holding this book and sleeping here. But the sound of reports from his men woke him up. Report, we just accidentally found a secret door, also leading to the underground. Is it open? Another underground secret door? Will there be something like this book? Rumlow's heart became hot. Open it. Rumlow ordered directly. Then the agents came to the secret door, and they struggled to pry it open. With the crunch of toothache, the trapdoor finally opened. It was also a pitch-black space, and the agents tried to shine it with light, but strangely nothing could be seen. In addition to darkness, it is darkness. It is like an abyss, even swallowing up that light. Just as the agent was puzzled, suddenly a gust of wind came from the abyss. The blow makes people feel cold. Strange, where is the wind under this? Could it be brought by the underground dark river? One of the agents leaned out slightly to look at the abyss. When he tried to shake the source of the lamp in his hand to illuminate as many places as possible. Suddenly, a shrill and extremely sharp inhuman cry came from the abyss. Next moment, half of the agent's body was eaten away by an invisible monster. Blood and internal organs flew everywhere, irregular tooth marks filled the agent's waist, and then the body that had lost its upper body fell into the abyss. No one could see exactly what had just happened. But the remaining agents know one thing. That's this monster from the abyss. And at the same time, Natasha immediately drew the short knife she was carrying secretly and cut the rope, as did Hawkeye. In an instant, they collected the distracted Hydra agent in front of them and rescued Tony. But at this moment, screams from under the library suddenly sounded. An emotion that made the three of them feel bad at the same time quietly grew. Grab me. Tony snapped at Natasha and Hawkeye, then smashed the wall with his palm cannon and flew out. An invisible monster burst out of the library a moment later. It bit Tony tightly as he was flying ahead. In an instant, in this dark underground ruins, a life and death speed was staged. Episode 43. Maria Hill arrived at the ruins in a very short time in a Kuan-style fighter. Because of the urgency of the situation, Nick Fury specially allowed the Kuan-type fighter to fly at full speed. When Agent Hill got off the Kuan fighter, she immediately saw corpses all over the ground. And the very front of these corpses is Coulson, who fell to the ground. Hill touched Coulson's aortic artery with his hand, and after sensing that the other party still had a very weak pulse, he hurriedly asked the medical team who followed to treat him. Then she set her sights on the ruins in front of her. Nick Fury didn't tell her all the information about the ruins. The other party only said that the three of Tony were in the ruins, and he hoped that Agent Hill would enter it and bring him back safely. Just as Hill was about to give the order, a tremor came faintly from underground. A booming sound followed. Hill immediately realized that something was wrong, and she instantly took out her pistol and said to the people behind her, "Back off. All back." The next moment when her order was given, a violent spark erupted from the top of the ruins in front of him, and then a steel figure burst out of it. And above that steel figure, there are two more people. This strange combination is Tony, Natasha, and Hawkeye. When they saw Maria Hill, they hurried towards it. Before Hill could ask, she heard an urgent shout from Natasha. "Retreat! All personnel retreated. There are monsters." Maria Hill's heart was stunned, but what happened immediately made her understand why Natasha looked so anxious and fearful. Boom! A sound like summer thunder came violently from the ruins. During the period, it was accompanied by the sound of countless stone pillars collapsing and colliding, and the chaotic sound was simply like an extremely bad symphony, which made people listen to it in a maniacal spirit. The sound was getting closer and closer to the surface. Then the earth began to tremble, and an invisible wind rose above the yellow sand, all as if to indicate something. Finally, accompanied by an extremely sharp and tearing sound, the exit of the ruins that had been blasted out by Tony Stark before instantly exploded a huge monster. The moment he saw the monster, even Hill, who had been trained, felt a burst of vertigo. It was a terrifying, hydra-like monster, with a fat and ugly main torso measuring 7 or 8 meters long and nearly 3 meters wide. Its gray-yellow skin kept stirring, like a constantly bulging blister, and on this strange and terrifying skin there were also many hideous blood-colored eyes and several scarlet mouths. Then from its fat and ugly main torso there were 3 other slender limbs sticking out, and at the end of the slender limb were pointed claws that split into 3 ends. This terrifying monster made the agents who followed Hill feel a deep fear. These agents are not to blame for this, because the shape of that monster is too much in line with the characteristics that humans fear unknown monsters. SHHHH. H. The screams of a crazy woman came from the monster's several mouths. Hill's brain became chaotic and lethargic. The agents behind her covered their heads. Fortunately, Tony slapped his palms hard, and the sound brought about by the metal exchange made Hill and the others sober up their heads. "Don't be stunned, shoot them all. Shoot that monster." With Natasha's words, all S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel present attacked the monster. Bang bang. Bang bang. The proud firearms of mankind are devouring deadly tongues of fire in this vast desert. When everyone was desperate and shocked, it was. The attack of the gun turned out to be useless against that monster. I saw that when all the bullets touched the monster, they all slowly merged into the monster's body. The damage that should have been done was nothing. Holy Chet! What the hell is this? Seeing this, Tony scolded and rushed straight into the sky, his figure rushing straight towards the monster, and at the same time his words floated in the air. "You guys hurry up and retreat, leave it to me here to pester each other." At this moment, Tony Stark showed his side as Iron Man. Natasha did not waste the other party's kindness, and she immediately let everyone get on the Kuan fighter. Then pressed the acceleration button, and the Kunji fighter immediately burst out into a sonic boom and moved away from here. Tony was also much more relaxed when he saw this scene. He immediately unfolded his shoulder missile, and the hollow muzzle was facing the monster in front of him. "Damn monster, let you taste this," Tony said indignantly, and then the powerful missile went straight at the monster. Thundered. With a violent explosion, the ugly and evil monster finally fell to the ground, but to Tony's shock, Fong Kai's attack actually only caused partial damage to the opponent's body. Even now those wounds are being repaired quickly. This made Tony's face change. But then something that made Tony even more desperate happened. Boom. From the ruins that had been dilapidated, there was a sound similar to that before. And this time, the momentum is even greater than before. Even the sand dunes in the distance are faintly trembling. It all says one thing. Monsters, more than one. Episode 44. Nick Fury, who was far away in Washington, D.C., suddenly received a communication request from a Kuan-type fighter. This Kuan fighter is the same one that Hill was riding on earlier. Nick Fury quickly connected. Then I heard Natasha's voice say nervously and urgently, "Fury, immediately notify the Australian government and let them come to the aid of Tony. There are monsters coming out of the ruins." Nick Fury was immediately stunned after hearing this. Although he didn't know exactly what happened, he hurriedly responded. Then the communication hangs up. Nick Fury immediately retrieved images of the current ruins via satellite. The moment the monster's figure appeared in front of Nick Fury, the king of agents couldn't help but scold. "Ma Jafak. What's going on here?" In the image, Tony is grappling with 4 monsters, but it seems that he has clearly gone downwind. This made Nick Fury immediately dial the emergency number of the White House. The satellite images were then transmitted to the other party. The person on the other side was visibly stunned. But the next moment, the head of the White House immediately dialed the Australian government. After contacting the White House, Nick Fury still felt unsafe in his heart. So he dialed the Pentagon again. He wants to request long-range fire assistance from warships wandering near Australia. After these 2 calls, Nick Fury's back was already sweating slightly. He quietly looked at the real-time satellite image in front of him, and his hand unconsciously clenched. "Tony, you don't have to go into trouble," Nick Fury prayed in his heart. At this time, Tony, who was fighting monsters in Australia, had 10,000 facts in his heart. What the hell is such a terrifying monster? Buzz. With a buzz, an invisible energy fluctuation emanated from the monster's body, and then rushed straight towards Tony. Tony quickly turned in the air, and the next moment the fluctuation crashed into the desert. Then I saw that the place that was bombarded showed crystallization. Just now, there was still fine flowing sand, but now it has become translucent solidification crystals. Shit. Tony scolded darkly. Then many invisible fluctuations of the Tao struck. Tony quickly dodged, he didn't dare to let the fluctuation hit it. With human technology, it takes at least 1,000 degrees of heat to turn sand into crystals, but this monster's attack is so easy to achieve the same effect. It is enough to see the power of terror. Tony rolled several times in the air at high speed, and then used the laser to attack the monster in front of him. But the results are less obvious. It's just that it burns a little of the monster's outer skin, and according to the monster's high-speed recovery power, it can soon be completely restored. And at this moment, the tentacles from the monster slammed into Tony's chest. Bang! The violent impact caused Tony to immediately be smashed into the desert like a cannonball. Even though there was soft sand under him, Tony still felt a burst of dizziness. This was followed by another hum. Tony hurriedly mobilized the warframe to leave the place, and the next moment an invisible fluctuation struck instantly. The soft desert immediately turned into crystals. If Tony had just slowed down a little, he would have gone to heaven. Tony, who survived the disaster, quickly adjusted his posture in the air, and the expression in his face armor was greatly rejoicing. Fack. Jarvis, did you detect that monster's weakness? Sorry, sir, I'm still trying. Jarvis's voice made Tony feel powerless for a while. He originally thought that his armor was already strong. But now it seems that it is still far from it. Tony knew that if he continued to stalemate with the monster like this, he would definitely lose. A hint of retreat flashed in his mind, but it was immediately denied by him. If he's gone? What if the monster goes to attack the city? And this relic was excavated by him, and although the appearance of the monster was not directly caused by him, it was also inseparable from him. Let him go now. He is not yet such a responsible man. There will be weaknesses, there can be no perfect creatures in this world. I insist on it a little longer, maybe I can find the weakness of the other party. Just as Tony was thinking, there was a sudden roar from the sky. As a professional weapons expert, Tony knew it was the sound of a fighter. He glanced up. It is Australia's official F-35 fighter jet. Then Tony received a communication from the fighter. Tony Stark, stay away from there, our side will bomb the target. Tony hurried into the distance, and then 4 F-35s dropped several airborne missiles at the 4 monsters in the air. Rumble. The missile power this time is far more terrifying than Tony's previous miniature missiles. The scorching wave of air instantly crystallized the desert in the center area of the monster. The earth trembled violently, as if it had been struck by a god giant. Then I heard the heart-rending screams of the monster. The next moment, 4 monsters fell to the ground one after another. They curled up on the ground with their huge and ugly bodies, covered with carbonization marks, and those hideous eyes flowed blood, as if they could not live long. Seeing this scene, Tony couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief in his heart. The heavy firepower of humans still has an effect on these monsters. But just as the pilots of the 4 fighters were celebrating each other, an even more violent tremor came from the ruins. Immediately after that, Jarvis's voice sounded in Tony's helmet. "Sir, more than 300 monsters have been detected moving outward at high speed from the ruins." Shit. Tony immediately warned the crew of the 4 fighters, but it was too late. Suddenly, a monster flapped its slender limbs and hit a fighter, followed by an explosion. An F-35 was destroyed on the spot. And the other 3 did not end well. They were shot down or destroyed by monsters one after another. The original celebration instantly turned into a dead silence. Tony stood alone in the air. And in front of him, one monster after another emerged from the ruins. They did not hide their huge and ugly bodies, and for a while it seemed that the entire sky was occupied by them. An emotion called despair suddenly arose from Tony's heart. But at this moment, a sudden communication gave him new hope. "Call Tony Stark, here's the American 7th Fleet, our side is coming to support you on the order of the Pentagon, please reply if you hear." Episode 45. On the vast Pacific Ocean. A fleet led by missile frigates is stationed in waters not far from Australia. After receiving a call from the Pentagon, they immediately came to Australia to support Tony Stark. But when they saw the monster that covered the sky through satellite footage, the soldiers, who thought they were tough, fell silent. Countless discussions followed. They were all discussing the ugly evil creature floating in the air, each with expressions of excitement and fear. And at this moment, a voice from Tony sounded. "This is Tony Stark, I've received your signal, now I'm going to lure these monsters to an open area where I hope to saturate these monsters." "Okay, but why can't you bomb from your current position?" There was no sign of other people's activity nearby, which was good for bombing. "Because these ruins are so important to humanity, they must be avoided." "Okay, I see." After hanging up the communication with Tony, the captain of the missile frigate immediately informed the entire fleet to prepare for the missile pre-launch. As long as Tony gives an order, the missiles from the ship will be brushed into the air. At this time, he looked at these hundreds of monsters in the sky in front of him and took a deep breath. Then he bravely rushed forward. With the launch of 2 miniature missiles on his shoulder, sparks immediately exploded in the monster group. This brings the monsters' hatred of Tony to its peak. They hissed and screamed and chased Tony together. Seeing this, Tony did not panic at all. "Yes, that's it, you all follow me." Tony soon took them to the depths of the Great Sand Desert. It is deserted and far from the remains of the Islamic civilization. Tony immediately gave instructions to the fleet. So in the vast Pacific Ocean, dozens of heavy missiles sprayed death-bearing tail flames straight to the center of the belly of the Great Sand Desert. Tony dodged the attack at full speed in the monster swarm while keeping an eye on the missile trajectory. With 10 seconds left before the missile reached the ground, Tony immediately urged the warframe to fly into the distance. The monsters were also aware of the missiles coming. But it's too late for them to hide. Just watch those dozens of heavy missiles fall one after another, accompanied by violent fire and sound. The whole earth is shaking. The rumbling sound can be heard even hundreds of kilometers away. This is one of the top firepower of mankind. Dozens of heavy missiles are enough to destroy a city. The shockwave generated by the explosion made even Tony, who was wearing armor, faintly retreat. Endless wild sand was thrown like stone-throwing seawater, and then mixed with the smoke of the explosion to form a thick and huge mushroom cloud. The sky in the vicinity was getting dark. Such a devastating scene made Tony in the air speechless for a long time. When the dust cleared, the bodies of the monsters had already fallen to the ground. Compared with the missile bombing of previous fighters, it is difficult for the monsters that have been bombed by heavy missiles this time to maintain their complete bodies. In the huge missile crater, shattered monster corpses filled it, and the blue blood and the remains of monster corpses made the pit in front of him look mysterious and bloody. Tony let out a long sigh of relief. At least for now, everything is finally calm. And the members of the missile escort fleet in the distance are also excited. There aren't many opportunities to fight monsters. When the fighting on the Australian side finally subsided, heated discussions began among the world's major powers. These powers all have autonomous satellites. Therefore, the figure of the monster cannot be hidden from them. Among these major countries, the most heated discussion is still the P5. But at the moment Tony doesn't care about that. He flew in front of the ruins again. The laser scan in his hand flashed, and then he heard Jarvis say, "After testing, there are no monster life fluctuations in the ruins." That's good. After hearing these words, Tony really let go of his heart. He was worried that the wave of monsters that the missile had just hit was not all monsters, and if there were still a few left in the ruins, it would be very troublesome. At this time, Nick Fury's communication reached Tony. "What's wrong, Fury?" Now Tony's attitude towards Nick Fury is much more polite. After all, he has indeed received a lot of help from the other party. "Tony, you're fighting monsters hard." "It's fine, but it's not what you're talking about, right?" "Yes, Tony. I promised you that I would break my word before, but this time the movement is too big, and the 5 permanent members have already noticed here. It's okay, let them study this ruin, it doesn't matter." Tony's words made Nick Fury stunned. After all, this was not the same as Tony's previous tone. "Why did you suddenly change your temperament?" "Because there are no books that record a lot of information about the future in the ruins. The current ruins are just a stone town with some special characteristics." "So it is. Okay, let's not talk about it for now, I'll talk about it in detail when I go back." "Good." After hanging up the communication with Nick Fury, Tony slowly flew towards the depths of the ruins. He was a little curious about what the underground of the library looked like, where the monsters came out in the first place, and he always felt that there should be something else there. When he came to the library again, he saw that the wooden door that had previously led to the ground had already broken into a large hole, apparently caused by the impact of the monsters. He slowly walked through the large hole to the underground room, and through the light of the armor he saw the corpses of the Hydra agents. They were the first to meet the monsters and, naturally, the first to die. Then he saw the room behind the wall. On the floor of that room, Rumlow's body was so broken that he didn't even see his face. This made Tony snort lightly. Then Tony saw the book in Rumlow's hand, which he was holding tightly. The moment he saw the book, Tony's eyes immediately became stunned. Fortunately, Jarvis sensed Tony's abnormality and woke him up. Tony shook his head, his expression a little surprised. What an evil sect. Having learned his lesson, Tony did not go directly to the book. He stripped off the clothes of the Hydra agent at the scene, and then he closed his eyes and relied on Jarvis's guidance to walk in front of Rumlow. The clothes were covered, and then he simply took the book from Rumlow. After doing this, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, today is really exciting. Tony recalled in his mind the startling glimpse he had just seen the book. Although he was hallucinating in an instant, he saw the name of the book before that. He knew the language of the great race of Is. And on the cover of that book, it is written in the words of the Isis. Codex Knackert. Episode 46. At the end of the day, Tony finally returns home. But almost as soon as he stepped into the house with his front foot, a communication from Nick Fury interrupted his desire to rest for a while. Tony, can you come here now? We need to exchange intelligence with each other. Can't you just let me rest first? I'm just over fighting those monsters. Tony's complaints didn't upset Nick Fury. He said calmly. Natasha found a small stone slab when she was in the ruins before. I think it may have something to do with you. Tony immediately perked up when he heard this. He said immediately. Okay, you win, I'll pass. So Tony didn't even have time to remove his armor, and once again flew to the SHIELD headquarters in Washington, D.C. There are already people here who are preparing to greet him. Tony soon followed the agents to an underground space in SHIELD. It was dull along the way. However, it did make Tony feel more comfortable, and he enjoyed the peace of the moment after the frantic battle. Soon, Tony meets Nick Fury, who is located in the basement. Natasha and Hawkeye are also here. Counting Tony, the trio of expedition ruins is all in place. Then Nick Fury dismissed everyone else, and by this time he had learned about Rumlow from Natasha. The fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. also had Hydra hidden inside made Nick Fury very annoyed. At the same time, it also made him suspicious of everyone. Okay, here I am, let's get started now, Tony said with a shrug. Nick Fury nodded at Natasha, and then Natasha took out a slate full of distorted words. It was the stone slab that the other party had picked up in the library. After Tony took it, his expression changed as he read. When he saw the human friend mentioned, Tony sighed. Unlike Natasha, who relied on the mental fluctuations of the slate to understand the above text, Tony knew the language of the Isis, so he could read it well. But because of this, he knew who the handwriting on the stone slab came from. It was his Islamic friend, Doc. Tony, now that we've seen the destroyers mentioned on this note, the monsters can indeed be called that, but I'm more curious about what forbidden knowledge this note mentions. Tony, when you came into contact with the Isis in your dreams, did you hear the other party mention the relevant knowledge? Nick Fury's one-eyed look at Tony quietly, which made him look extremely oppressive. Tony was silent for a moment, as if he was thinking about something, as if he was remembering something. Then he nodded. This made Nick Fury and others suddenly feel a sudden heart, and a bad emotion suddenly arose in their hearts. Doc once warned me about the old dominators, ancient gods and the like, but I didn't take them as real at the time. Even now I have some doubts, because the text that records the old dominators is too mythical and legendary. Wait, that's what your expression looks like? Tony said and noticed the change in the expressions of the three people in front of him. It was as if he had heard something unbelievable, mixed with a faint fear. Tony. About the old dominators. Have you considered that they are real? Nick Fury's tone became a little heavy. Tony frowned. What do you mean? You come with me, Nick Fury said and turned and walked in one direction. Tony followed behind the other party, and after a burst of metal door opening and closing, they came to an extremely tight secret room. The chamber was about 20 square meters in size, and there was nothing in it except what stood in the center. It is shrouded in specially made radiation-proof glass. At the same time, a heavy black cloth covered its body. Judging from the raised contour alone, the size of the object is not large. What is it? Tony asked. If everything is true, then this is what you call one of the old dominators, the statue of Cthulhu. Nick Fury's words made Tony's pupils suddenly constrict. Can you uncover it? Yes, but you must wear the appropriate protective equipment, otherwise it will easily erode people's spirits. Then Nick Fury took out 4 sets of protective equipment, and after the 4 people were dressed, Nick Fury removed the transparent glass that shrouded the statue, and then gently uncovered the black and heavy cloth. The evil and strange statue that had caused turmoil in more than 200,000 people had finally appeared in this world again. When Tony saw the appearance of the statue, his eyes suddenly froze. At this moment, his heart seemed to have been hit by a heavy hammer, and a fear from 400 million years ago suddenly surged into his heart. He suddenly echoed the words he had read in the Great Library about Cthulhu, the old ruler. Tony used to think it was just a nonsense written by a man in panic and madness. But now, he couldn't think of it anymore. Because the terrifying and weird appearance of the god on the statue in front of him was basically the same as the record in that crazy text. Driven by some curiosity and other emotions, Tony subconsciously took off his protective glasses. He saw the statue with his naked eyes. Then he saw the great and vast terrifying deity. Episode 47. Tony. Nick Fury's voice rang in Tony's ears. Tony's distracted eyes suddenly returned to clarity. After seeing this scene, Nick Fury breathed a deep sigh of relief and continued. How did you take off your protective glasses? I'm just a little curious. There was a mention in the Isis texts that there is a hallucination when looking directly at things related to the old dominators, and I want to see if it's true. So, do you see that? Nick Fury asked. Tony nodded. A terrifying tall figure sitting in front of the deep-sea temple. Even if it's just a glimpse, it's enough for Tony to remember it. There's one more thing, you come with me again. Nick Fury once again took Tony forward. This time they came to a basement next door to the statue. A book is kept here. Tony stepped forward, and then he saw the name of the book. The Book of the Dead. His gaze was on Nick Fury, waiting for the other man's explanation. This book, which we got from London, comes from a family where no traces can be found, and contains some texts about some unknown gods, but because a lot of the content has been consciously smeared, we have no way of knowing the specific names of those gods. Luckily, there's a little bit about Cthulhu, and there's not a lot of smeared touches, so we know a little about Cthulhu. Nick Fury's words made Tony curious. Can I flip through it? Yes. Then Tony carefully opened the Book of the Dead in front of him. Unlike Nick Fury, who was confused when reading the book, Tony could read the book in general with what he knew from the great race of Is. Although he still has a lot of knowledge that he does not know, it is already much better than shield reading. When he turned to the last page, the content of the Book of the Dead is interrupted here. Fragments. This is the note on the side of the counter of the Book of the Dead. Are you familiar with what's in it? Nick Fury asked. Tony nodded. He put the book back and continued. It mentions a lot of things I had seen in the library of Is, such as the names of some of the old dominators and the history of some ancient races. Nick Fury was overjoyed to hear this, and he immediately hoped that Tony could help them with shield to decrypt the book. Tony didn't say no. So far, Tony has realized what the myths he once dismissed represent. If you do not choose to cooperate at this time, then at the moment of crisis, humanity may be powerless to fight back. Tony's heart was already a little nervous at this time. Because if everything is true, then what the old dominators represent is very serious. That would be the truth that humanity is powerless to struggle with at the moment. Well, that's all the information S.H.I.E.L.D. has about the old dominators at the moment. Tony, you've seen my sincerity, and I hope you can be equally honest. After returning to the original basement, Nick Fury said to Tony with his hands outstretched. Tony took a deep breath and said, I also have a book here, which I picked up from the underground of the library. The three of Nick Fury looked startled. Then Tony placed the package he had been carrying since entering the door on the table between the four of them, which was wrapped in the clothes of Agent Hydra. With a somewhat solemn and nostalgic expression, he slowly opened the package. It's like the contents of this package are his treasures. His strange look caught Nick Fury's attention, and the King of Agents saw in Tony's eyes at this time a look similar to that of ordinary people when looking at the statue of Cthulhu. It's not that serious, but it's already showing signs of it. This made Nick Fury immediately realize that the contents of the package were not trivial. Just as he was about to say something, Tony had opened the package completely in the direction of the three of them. A black book that exudes a simple and mysterious atmosphere is lying quietly in it. On the surface of the book, there is no other decoration, only a line written in the Islamic language. And the moment Nick Fury, Natasha, and Hawkeye saw the book, they all showed a confused posture, and then the confused expression turned into a crazy look. They stretched out their hands towards the black book, their expressions urgent and full of longing, as if the book in front of them was an incomparable treasure. Tony saw this and immediately rewrapped the package. With this action, the state of the three of Nick Fury was restored to clarity. They withdrew their outstretched hand, and their eyes were filled with incomparable fear. It was a fear of what was in the package, and it was a palpitation of Funksai's situation. Well, it seems that your first reaction when you see this book is much more serious than mine. Tony pouted, looking a little teasing. But the three of Nick Fury did not mean to refute anything. Tell me, what did you just see? Tony asked. Episode 48. When Tony first saw the book on the ground floor of the Heritage Library, he saw a scene in front of him that he had lived with his family. If it hadn't been for Jarvis' timely awakening, Tony might have stood in the underground ruins for a long time before he came to his senses. But even that is much better than the posture presented by the three of them Nick Fury. The crazy demeanor of Nick Fury and the three of them was really weird. It was as if they had been controlled by some unknown evil being. Fortunately, I came to my senses afterwards. At this point, they fell silent listening to Tony's inquiry. On their faces, an indescribable emotion flashed, like nostalgia and sadness. At this time, Hawkeye was the first to speak. I saw my wife and children. Then Natasha spoke. I saw the people who saved me. Her face revealed remembrance and warmth, which was an extremely rare look for the female agent known as Black Widow. And Nick Fury also spoke at this time. What I saw was the most relaxing view of my life, but I can't describe it. After listening to the answers of the three people, Tony immediately had some speculation about the book in his mind. He summarized what he and the three people saw, and extracted similarities from them, and finally came to a conclusion. That's when they all see the best things in their lives. Perhaps this is how this book demagogues people to read it. When Tony said his guess, the scene was silent. After a moment, Nick Fury nodded slightly. At the moment, this conclusion is clearly the most reliable. Can you understand the name on this book? Nick Fury asked. Yes, that is the language of the Isis. If it is translated, the name of the book is the Codex Nacht. By the way, the relic of the Isis, when it was still in its glory, its name was the city of Nacht. Tony's words made Nick Fury think. A mysterious book commanded in the name of the city. What's the connection behind this? Can you read this book? Nick Fury asked. Tony thought for a moment before saying, if you could have copied the contents of this book and read it again, you might have avoided the insane situation you just had, but I'm not sure. Okay, then please try it first, and if there is a result, I hope you can tell me the information. Don't worry, now that we are in a state of cooperation, I will not hide it, and I am now a member of your Avengers, I will do my duty. Tony said casually. Tony's attitude did not affect Nick Fury's trust in him. He knew Tony Stark wouldn't break his word about this. Under the other party's seemingly frivolous attitude to the world, there is actually a very responsible heart hidden. This is the conclusion that Nick Fury came to after years of observing Tony. By the way, I heard Natasha say that you also brought back a box from the ruins. Stop, sorry, Fury, although we are partners now, there are some personal things that we still can't share, you understand? Tony's words made Nick Fury, who was still feeling Tony's sense of responsibility in his heart just now, suddenly turn dark. He instantly felt that the mental activity he had just had been fed to the dog. However, Tony ignored the change in the other's expression. He then said, let's stay here for the time being, we'll see you next time. Then he walked to the elevator with the package. When his figure disappeared into the basement, Natasha spoke. Fury, what do we do now? Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, the most important problem now is that I need to go to the United Nations Masters. The ruins of Islam in Australia are personally protected by you, and no one can enter without my permission. Okay. Also, Clint, I need you to investigate inside S.H.I.E.L.D., the agents of Hydra are hiding under our noses, Maj Alfark. It's outrageous. Good. After the orders were given separately, the figures of Nick Fury and the three were separated. Natasha traveled to Australia in a Quinn fighter, while Hawkeye hid inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and began an internal investigation. Nick Fury also embarked on a helicopter to the United Nations. He looked out the window. The calm, clear sky couldn't calm Nick Fury's heart. For some reason, Nick Fury always had the feeling that the mountain rain was about to come. Cthulhu statues, ruins of the Islamic civilization, unknown monsters. What secrets are hidden behind all this? Episode 49. After Tony flew back to his house in armor, he took a good shower and then went to the basement. The package containing Codex Nacht lay quietly on the couch, but Tony's eyes were not on it. He came to the work desk. Here, a stone box is placed smoothly on it. Tony turned it on. The paper covered with his handwriting lay peacefully in it. He took out all the papers and read them one by one. What is recorded on these papers is scientific and technological knowledge that goes far beyond the current Earth. Even though Tony had a good memory, he couldn't possibly write down all the books he had read in the great library of ISS. So, these old notes are useful. After this battle with monsters, Tony realized the weakness of his armor, and he needed to draw knowledge from future knowledge to further transform his armor. And when he turned to the last one, his expression changed. It was not English, but a script belonging to the Isis race. It was a letter that Doc left him. Tony, I'm Doc. If you see the letter I left for you, it means that you have dug up our relics. Congratulations on fulfilling your promise. But it's a pity that because our family wants to relocate the starry sky, we also have to take the books here, and you are destined to never see them again. But I believe that with your cleverness, you can create as much knowledge as those books. I left you this letter mainly to remind you not to open the basement of the library, where the Nacht manuscript is sealed, and never try to flip through it. At the same time, there is another secret door in that room, in which the flying Hydra lives. They are monsters from outer space, and the main reason why our family moved is because of it. If someone accidentally releases them, remember that the current in plasma form is their weak point. Tony, if there's still a chance, I hope we can meet again someday in the future. You are my only foreign friend so far, and perhaps the only one in the future. Finally, according to your human custom, I hereby send you my blessings. Tony, may the abyss of knowledge never devour you. After reading the letter, Tony let out a long sigh. The emotions in his chest at this time can be said to be extremely complicated. Tony didn't know how to describe the emotion. He felt an emotion of sadness and contentment. This made him twitch his nose. An alien friend from 400 million years ago. Who will believe it? In addition, the mention of the flying hydra in the letter also made Tony feel helpless. If he had seen this letter earlier, would it have been so difficult? Fortunately, human heavy missiles eventually worked. But Tony couldn't help but think. Did the explosion of the missile play a role, or did the high-temperature plasma current generated when the missile exploded play a role? But none of this mattered. He already knew the weaknesses of those monsters, and even if he encountered them again in the future, he would not have to be as troublesome and embarrassed as today. Tony put the letter in the safe with great preciousness. Then adjust your mindset and focus on the mysterious book. He removed the Codex Naket from its package by remote mechanical means to avoid mental distractions. However, in this process, just in case, he still wore the corresponding anti-mental interference equipment. This is what he came from S.H.I.E.L.D. Then he wrote a program that automatically flipped the book. Next, the mechanic will replace Tony to turn the pages of the Codex Naket. Each page is accompanied by a photo. When all this is done, Tony will translate the text on those photos. This method he got from S.H.I.E.L.D. They began studying the Cthulhu statue, and that's it. It seems that mental distractions can be significantly reduced by such means. I hope this book will bring something useful, Tony said to himself as he looked at the working machine. Then he went to study his armor. A moment later, the tinkling sound sounded. Australia, Great Sand Desert. At this time, Natasha was stationed here with a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. people. Anyone who tries to get close to here will be dissuaded by Natasha. Of course, if the other party refuses, it will be persuaded by Natasha's more soft approach. But Natasha, who is closely guarding here, would never have thought of it. At this time, among the ruins behind her, a figure had already appeared here. It was a mysterious man in a yellow robe and a hood. Her every move carries an intangible and ineffable charm. Dust avoids her when she walks, and darkness can't block her eyes. Gu-Yi quietly looked at the ruins in front of him. A strange and confused look appeared in her deep eyes. It's like seeing something that shouldn't exist. Episode 50. Ancient One has lived on Earth for 700 years. She has seen most of the magic, and has experienced most of them firsthand. But at this time, the scene in front of her made her feel a sense of confusion that she had never felt before. When did the Earth have such a civilization? This question haunted Koichi's mind. She walked slowly through the city of the great race of Is, reaching out and touching the uniquely shaped buildings. She could see the architectural ingenuity of the creatures that built the city. Just as Tony can see at a glance the extraordinary mathematical logic contained in this stone city. This is not the level that humanity can achieve at the moment. After realizing this incident in his mind, Gu-Yi's lips pursed slightly. Her eyebrows tightened unconsciously. She noticed this when Tony fought the monsters, and then listened to Tony's conversation with Nick Fury and others at S.H.I.E.L.D. All this made this supreme mage who thought he knew the Earth feel refreshed in his worldview. How did she not know that there was such a group of higher creatures on Earth 400 million years ago? She used to rely on the time gem to observe everything in the river of time. In the scenes she had seen. But there is no such thing as the great race of Is. But this is how the traces of this racial life have appeared. Moreover, Gu-Yi could not feel any falsehood from it. What the hell is going on here? Gu-Yi did not understand. Gradually, she traveled to every corner of the city. From crumbling streets to destroyed houses and buildings and the once splendid library. She tried to get some more detailed information from it. As she wished, she found a mural depicting the history of the race in a secret room in the city. Extraterrestrial creatures, old dominators, ancients, Cthulhu, star dependents. Some of the contents of the mural could be understood, but some of them she could not. Just like the evil and weird octopus-like creature drawn above, she couldn't understand it. But it immediately reminded her of the evil statue she had seen when she spied on Tony and Nick Fury. The moment he saw the statue, Ferrucci felt an extremely evil spirit trying to invade his brain. That evil spiritual force is essentially deeper and darker than those demons in the dark dimension. Although the strength of that spiritual power was not too strong for Gu-E, what was represented behind it made Gu-E wary. Ferrucci frowned tightly, her expression unable to relax. What is the creature called Cthulhu on the statue? Why had she never heard anything about the statue and Cthulhu? What is the connection between the mural in front of you and the statue or Cthulhu? One question after another haunted Gu-Ye's heart. This made her wonder the reality of the world she was in. Is this really the Earth she remembers? Behind this, could there be some kind of power that she couldn't detect? When he thought of this, Gu-Ye's body instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Because if this hypothesis is true, that means that at this time, there is an invisible being who is playing with everything on the Earth with his big black hands. At the same time, the other party silently looks at everything on the Earth in a dimension beyond biological perception. Even, at this moment, Gu-E was being watched by the other party. Ferrucci rubbed his eyebrows. In 700 years, she had never felt as anxious as she did today. Originally, she was still planning her retirement, but now it seems that she may have to wait. If there really is such a behind-the-scenes hand. That one strange wasn't enough. In the blink of an eye, it's night. New York, Brooklyn. Liang sat alone in the bookstore and looked at the book, and the book he was reading today was a book about the geography of the Arctic Ocean. The glaciers in the Arctic Ocean have melted in recent years. Many scientists are worried about whether some ancient viruses will be released along with the melting of glaciers. Liang couldn't help but chuckle when he saw these arguments. The virus is not visible, but as the glacier melts, it is likely that someone will be dug up. When he finished reading the book, he put it down and stretched slightly. Today, Jessica can't come over to rest with Leon because she has to conduct research on a topic. However, Liang did not care about this. He walked out of the store and looked at the quiet starry sky at night, and a rather cheerful and leisurely mood arose. It would be nice if everything could be as calm as the starry sky in front of us forever. But he also knew that what he had in mind was impossible. Otherwise, this is not the Marvel Universe. He suddenly thought of the scene of Gu-E exploring the ruins that he saw through the void today. Liang knew that the Supreme Mage was already suspicious. But he didn't care. This is not out of some kind of arrogance, but out of a kind of forethought. In this regard, Liang just wants to say, everything at the moment is just the beginning, Ancient One Mage. You have to be prepared for more unknowns. Just when Liang was about to return to the bookstore to continue reading, his brows suddenly wrinkled slightly. Then his figure disappeared silently in place.